Howdy-ho, Andrew here. Welcome to the Onion Buns and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Oilers. So it occurred to me that doing the breakdown last week, I forgot to make my predictions for the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So why don't we start this video off with that? And I'm going to go to a split screen here so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, because one of the teams I would be cheering for is already advanced to the third round. So, all right, here we are. So, in the second round, we have Buffalo and Montreal. Montreal is currently winning 2-1 in games, but my choice or my hope, because let me be honest, I have no connection to any of these teams as franchise. I couldn't give a shit whether it's Buffalo, Montreal, Carolina, Philly, Anaheim, Vegas, Minnesota, Colorado. I couldn't give a crap who wins. The only connection I have is to some players, and that is how I am cheering. So my hope is Buffalo wins because of Ryan McLeod. That simple. Carolina, I would have hoped would win, and they did because of Taylor Hall. And Colorado, I hope will win because of Brent Kulak. Now, let me be very honest here. I think Hall, Kulak, and McLeod should still be Oilers. The only reason they're not Oilers today is really shitty management. Like, seriously. The McLeod for Savoy trade is a debacle, plain and simple. They're both third-line players, but McLeod, he brings so much more to the table than Matt Savoy ever will. You know, and Bob Stauffer and the rest of them, they can talk about how Savoy's going to be a top 6 player and blah, blah, blah. Maybe he will be, you know, but he won't be a good top 6 player. Like, we saw that this season. He was not a good top 6 player, and he wasn't even a good third-line player because he's too small and too passive. So, you know, Ryan McLeod, you don't trade one for one. That was just a really shitty trade. Carolina, same thing. Taylor Hall for Adam Larsson. I got nothing against Larsson. I think Adam Larsson is an excellent second pairing defenseman. Like, I would love to have Nurse and Larsson on the second pairing before we got Murphy. I'm talking prior to Murphy. That would have been a very strong second pairing that would have been excellent. But Chiarelli traded Hall, who at the time, like, let's not talk now, let's talk at the time of the trade. Taylor Hall at the time was a franchise player. Adam Larsson was an excellent second pairing defenseman. You don't trade one for one for that. Like I said when that trade happened, that it was one of the worst trades I'd ever seen in Oiler history. Now, if it had been Larsson and a first-round pick from the Devils, I could have lived with that. Or my preference would have been Larsson and Adam Henrique from the Devils at the time. That would have been an excellent trade. But that's not what we got. We got Adam Larsson by himself, and then due to circumstances well beyond any of our control, you know, sadly his father passed away and it was just too many memories. But Larsson left, you know, so we got nothing for that trade. We traded a franchise player for nothing. Welcome to Peter Chiarelli. There's a reason he's Mark Carney's best friend. And then on Colorado, like, the fact that Brent Kulak is on the Colorado Avalanche should piss every Oiler fan out there off. Like, it should make you rabidly angry. Because what did we get back for Brent Kulak? We got nothing. We got Stastny. And Stastny is a 7-8 defenseman at best. And maybe even lower because he's undersized. And the last thing the Oilers need is yet another offensive defenseman. You know, we already got Bouchard. We already got Woolman. And then we got Spencer Stastny, who's, like I said, a 7-8 defenseman at best. You know, so just a horrible, horrible, horrible trade. You know, and we also in that trade, we lost Stuart Skinner, who is better than Ingram or Jari for half to a third of the salary cap. So another terrible, terrible trade by management. You know, so I want one of these three guys to win the Stanley Cup. That's simple. And I'll find it very ironic that three Oilers had to go to another team to win the Stanley Cup. And they win before McDavid and Leon do. And that's nothing against Leon. That's nothing against McDavid. Those two are, like, McDavid's the best player in the league, and Leon I have at number 2 or 3. So I'm not slagging Leon or Connor at all, but the simple fact is if Kulak, McLeod, or Hall wins the Stanley Cup this year, they will have won the Stanley Cup before Leon and Connor do. And that's completely on shitty Oiler management. We got to stop hiring shitty managers and coaches. Like Taylor Hall when he was an Oiler. I was a big Taylor Hall fan, and I was not one of these toxics that tried to run him out of town. But I saw the problem, and the problem was Ralph Kruger. Now, I remember one game in particular. It was actually a double hit. We were playing the Vancouver Canucks, and Bietska and the other cheap shot artist, I forget his name now, they were running Taylor Hall nonstop. And Mark Fistrick had enough of it, and he stepped up to protect Taylor Hall, and Kruger sent him to the minors the next day. And in came Corey Pylon Potter. And we all know what a disaster Corey Potter was on the Edmonton Oilers. Big guy, no physicality to him whatsoever, no grit, no passion. Just Kruger loved him because Potter played European hockey, non-contact European hockey. That's how Potter played. And it did us absolutely no good. And after that game, I called in to Ched. It was Stauffer wasn't there at the time. It was the guy before Tenser. And I called in. I was living in Ontario at the time. And I called in. I said, we got to put Eager up with Hall to protect Hall because teams are running him. And Tenser started laughing, like literally laughing at me on air, and said one of the stupidest things. He's like, oh yeah, because Wayne Gretzky played with Semenko and McSorley. I'm like thinking, yeah, actually he did. And for that exact reason, so teams wouldn't run Wayne Gretzky. But Tenser was just as bad as Stauffer. He loved to try to embarrass his callers that he disagreed with, just like Stauffer does. And yeah, I took a long break from listening to Ched after that. Actually, I didn't listen to it again until Tenser was gone and Stauffer came in. But yeah, I want to see one of these 3 players win their cup. I really do. I don't care about the teams they're on. I have no loyalty to any of those teams, including Montreal. I don't care they're called the Canadiens. Frankly, I can't stand watching that team. So I have no passion for any of the teams, but for the 3 players, I want to see one of those 3 players win the cup. That is what I'm hoping for this season. Now, probably it's looking like Buffalo's not going to get past Montreal. That sucks. Hopefully Carolina can get rid of Montreal. I still say Colorado's going to beat Minnesota. I don't know, maybe Minnesota will take it to 7 games, but I still think Colorado will beat Minnesota. And much as I'd like to see Anaheim beat Vegas, I think Vegas will win that matchup. So to jump ahead, that would give us, in my world, that would give us Colorado versus Vegas, which I'm going to go with Colorado in 5. Not joking. And Carolina versus Montreal, I'm going to go with Carolina in 6, giving us Colorado versus Carolina in the Stanley Cup Finals. And, I would love to see Hall win the cup, but I'm going to probably favor Colorado because, well, Brent Kulak for one reason, and for the other reason is Eastern fans are just so freaking obnoxious whenever an Eastern team wins the Stanley Cup that I just, I'll cheer for the West to win the Stanley Cup just to shut the Eastern fans up. But I still wouldn't complain if Taylor Hall won a cup. So anyway, yeah, I forgot to do that last week. So that is my predictions to the Stanley Cup final. I'll adjust it next week if I'm wrong on something because, yeah, who knows? It's a close series other than Colorado or Carolina. So we'll see. Anyway, so the big conversation going on now is, well, it's still the blame game. People are still blaming. There's a full court press to drive Nurse out of town. The media is pushing it. The toxics are pushing it. as I said last video, I don't get it. Him and Murphy were our best two defensemen, bar none. And then there was a big drop. Our next two best defensemen, which were Emberson and Ekholm. And then there was another big drop to Bouchard and Wellman, who were absolutely horrendously terrible. So apparently on Stauffer's show today, they were trying to pass off the theory that Evan Bouchard played with a concussion throughout the entire playoffs. Well, the one round, 6 games. Yeah, so that's why the day after the playoffs, he signed up with the World Championships, because he was concussed. The excuse making in this Edmonton market for Evan Bouchard never ends. And it's embarrassing. It really is. It's like you cannot say anything about Bouchard in this market without the media and the toxics losing their minds over it. They got 1,001 excuses. Unless they don't like you, because they don't like Nurse, and they want Nurse gone. They didn't like Skinner, so they drove him out of town. They didn't like Dubnyk years ago, so they drove him out of town. It's the same cycle every single year, and it just repeats itself. These toxics and the media, they pick 4 or 5 players or coaches to target at the start of the year, and they do everything they can do to drive those players and coaches out of town. Like Holland is a far better GM than Bowman is. I dare say if we had Holland this past year, I think this past year would have ended up quite differently, because we would not have had the Matt Savoys, the Ike Howards playing on one line. Like Holland would have made sure we had grit in our bottom 6, whereas Bowman just overloaded us with undersized players who eventually did nothing. Absolutely nothing. Poof. Nothing. But the one thing about Holland, I'll say, is he ignored and tuned out the media and the toxics. He did not let them make the choices for him. And maybe that's why they went after him. Could be because Bowman's not an upgrade over Holland. And you look at Knobloch. Knobloch in the first 2 seasons with Holland as the GM was a far better coach because Holland gave him far better material and players. In the 3rd season, it was Bowman and Knobloch designed this team, and well, we know what happened. Poof! Gone. There was nothing. It was just Knobloch playing the same 2 lines for 50 out of every 60 minutes of a game. And I saw today they're talking, can Frederick recover? Now, I don't think Trent Frederick had a great season, but I think a lot of that is because of how Knobloch utilized him. Or didn't utilize them. And, I think Trent Frederick was set up to fail from the first puck drop by Chris Knobloch because he's not undersized. He can play physical. Everything Knobloch seems to hate. Knobloch reminds me a lot of Ralph Kruger. And I think Ralph Kruger was the worst coach that I saw in my 60 years of life. And for, however long the Oilers have been in the NHL. Ralph Kruger was the worst. Knobloch this season was challenging Ralph Kruger, doing much of the same thing. Undersized, non-physical, non-gritty, non-passion, offense, ignore the defense, blame the goalie. Exactly what was done before, so exactly what Kruger did. So anyway, that's the news. World Championship starts on the 15th, being televised. I'm going to be tuning into that more than I'm going to tune into the NHL playoffs, to be honest. I'll just score watch for the playoffs. Like I said, I really have no invested interest in the Stanley Cup playoffs, other than the 3 players I named. Just hoping one of them can pick up a Stanley Cup. But I don't need to watch the games for that. So I'll spend more time watching the World Championships because I would like to see how the Oilers rookies and prospects and Nurse and Bouchard and that do. Like if Bouchard stinks out the world with lack of defense, then the pressure on Evan Bouchard is only going to intensify. If he doesn't start figuring out how to play defense, it's going to intensify. If Nurse plays the way he played in this playoffs, it seems like the only people that are going to hate on Nurse is the Edmonton Oilers toxics and the media because, like I keep hearing about the salary cap. Well, Evan Bouchard is paid $1 million more than Darnell Nurse. Evan Bouchard is a elite offensive defenseman. He's a one-dimensional offensive defenseman. Darnell Nurse is an elite two-way defenseman. He's not elite offensively. He's not elite defensively, but he's right up there in both categories. And that's so hard to find. It really is. You know, it's like everyone keeps on, oh, well, we'll just trade Nurse. Nobody wants him. You're full of caca. The league will be lining up to take Darnell, and they're going to try to lowball the Oilers because of the way the Oilers and the Oiler toxics have been treating him. And if Nurse does accept a trade, hopefully not to Toronto. That's really the Toronto and Vancouver. Any other team, and I'll stay a Nurse fan, but if he goes to Toronto or Vancouver, even I have to tap out on that one. But Nurse going to another team, that team is going to absolutely love him because the problem is not Darnell Nurse's play. The problem is our local media and our toxic fan base. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the video for this week. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, a subscribe, and a share. I'm trying to grow my channel, and a like, a subscribe, and a share does me wonders, and I do appreciate it. Takes 1 second to subscribe. Costs you absolutely nothing, helps me immensely. Just hit the subscribe button on the bottom of the screen. If you're watching this on Rumble or Instagram, please follow my channels. Always feel free to leave a comment. Please come into the comments. Tell me what you think. Let me know your feedback. As long as you're not a douchebag about it, go ahead, leave the comment. Also, leaving a comment really does help me with the YouTube algorithm and getting more eyes on my videos. And as always, pew, 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.